At first glance, Squid Game seems like an exaggerated dystopia, a clandestine game where indebted and desperate individuals risk their lives for a colossal prize. But could something like this truly exist? If we look closely, it's not as impossible as it seems. In ancient Rome, the idea of transforming human suffering into entertainment wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. Gladiators were thrown into arenas to fight to the death under the watchful eyes of a crowd that cheered at every blow. They weren't heroes by choice. Many were slaves or prisoners forced to fight for a slim chance at freedom or, at the very least, to prolong their lives for another day. The Colosseum, the most famous stage for these battles, was far more than just a monumental structure. It was the beating heart of a society that made bloodshed a form of entertainment. If this seems brutal, it's because it was. What makes these arenas particularly unsettling, however, is the parallel we can draw with Squid Game. Like the gladiators, the show's players are brought to a place where their lives are put to the test for the amusement of those in power. The difference is that, in ancient Rome, the spectacle was public, while in Squid Game, it hides in the shadows, away from prying eyes. What is truly frightening is realizing how brutality can be normalized. In Rome, the fights weren't seen as immoral, they were part of the culture, something expected and, to some extent, admired. This makes us wonder, if we've done this before, what's stopping something similar from happening again, perhaps in a more modern and, who knows, even more secretive format? Now imagine a world where the mysterious disappearances we hear about in the news serve an even darker purpose. Just like in Squid Game, the people who enter the game are not chosen randomly. They have something in common. They are invisible to society. The indebted, the homeless, undocumented foreigners, people who can vanish without raising an alarm. This is chillingly plausible, especially in places where social inequality is so extreme that these lives become disposable in the eyes of those at the top. There are stories in the real world that echo this idea. People disappear every day, and in some cases, they are never found. Do all these stories end in common tragedies, or is there something more sinister happening behind the scenes? In Squid Game, players are approached in busy yet vulnerable places, like train stations, a scenario reminiscent of the daily lives of many missing persons. What makes this idea even more plausible is the fact that, in various parts of the world, criminal networks already operate with a frightening level of organization, using others' desperation as fuel for their purposes. This brings us to the core question: what happens when a powerful elite decides to turn human lives into pieces of a macabre game, all in the name of entertainment? In a society where inequality is extreme, where those with money can literally buy impunity, the possibility of something like Squid Game doesn't seem as far-fetched as we'd like to believe. If we look at human trafficking, we see one of the darkest aspects of our reality. Underground networks worldwide operate with an alarming level of sophistication, exploiting people already in desperate situations. To them, these individuals are not human beings. They are commodities, pieces of a system that squeezes out every last drop of their strength or utility. What if these networks took it a step further? Imagine a scenario where these people were not only used for forced labor or exploitation but placed in something more elaborate, something that combines violence and entertainment. There are already rumors of underground fights where men bet their lives in illegal combats. Add to this the sadism of a bored and powerful elite, and the concept of Squid Game begins to seem disturbingly viable. The series touches on this point incisively. The recruitment of players, with promises of money and an escape from their problems, resembles methods used by real criminal organizations. They don't need to force people to join, desperation does it for them. When there are no other options, even a deadly game might seem like a better opportunity than a life that offers nothing. Now let's talk about the elites, those powerful and unreachable figures who, in Squid Game, watch the death games as if they were an exclusive spectacle. The idea that the rich and influential could entertain themselves with others suffering might seem exaggerated at first, but it's not so absurd when we consider the numerous scandals involving powerful figures in the real world. These stories often reveal how money and influence can shield the wealthiest from any consequences, allowing them to operate beyond morality and even the law. It's not hard to imagine that, in clandestine environments, people with unlimited resources could turn human lives into mere entertainment, far from the public's and authorities' eyes. In Squid Game, the VIPs are the perfect portrayal of this detachment. They appear masked not just to hide their identities, but because, to them, the players' identities don't matter. The suffering and struggle are merely a game, a spectacle to fill the void of their luxurious existences. When money can buy anything, even human dignity becomes disposable, and the concept of a modern Colosseum starts to seem disturbingly plausible. Now imagine the perfect scenario for something like Squid Game to exist. Think of a remote location, isolated from the world, away from society's curious eyes. The participants, desperate and hopeless, are taken to an environment where their lives become playthings in the hands of those with absolute power. It sounds like fiction, but it's a scenario that could very well unfold in a world where corruption and inequality create the perfect conditions for it. In regions where legal systems are weak, oversight is non-existent, and elites have access to unlimited resources, something like this could be organized with little risk. All it takes is a combination of silence, money, and an infrastructure that keeps everyone involved under control. The series portrays this frighteningly well. Players are taken to a secret location, completely disconnected from the real world, making control easier and escape impossible. And this is exactly what makes the idea so unsettling. It's not just the brutality of the games that causes discomfort, but the way everything is organized and kept in absolute secrecy. With every detail, Squid Game makes us wonder, could something like this already be happening somewhere, and we simply don't know about it? Reflecting on all the elements presented, the idea that something like Squid Game could exist in real life stops seeming so far-fetched. History has shown us examples of how human suffering was turned into spectacle. The present reminds us that vulnerable people continue to be exploited in unimaginable ways. Combine this with the unchecked power of elites and the fragility of systems meant to protect the weakest, and the scenario starts to take shape. Perhaps the most disturbing part isn't the possibility that something like this happens in secret, but the fact that the series concept works as a metaphor for what we already live through. In a world where survival is a daily struggle, where people are invisible until they become useful, and where the most powerful remain above any punishment, the real Squid Game might not be on a remote island but within our own society. The question that remains is, what are we willing to do to stop the game from continuing? If you enjoyed this content and want to see more incredible analyses and theories, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss anything. And now, check out the video appearing on the screen. I'm sure you'll love it. See you next time.